I'm a firm believer that we should provide our AI assistant with proper building blocks if we want a proper outcome. Prevent AI slop. For that reason, I am building a component library with reusable components that I've been crafting in my last couple of C#.NET projects end-to-end with Blazor frontends. Besides reusable components, entire modules to be plugged and played into a new project. Ideally, I could just give it access to my component library and all of the documentation of the modules, ask what I want, what do I include, exclude, and have it build it out for me. These are fully functional, handcrafted end-to-end modules. So instead of just scaffolding a nice looking layout with questionable code, I would prefer it to use these building blocks. These building blocks are included in the .NET brand website version 3, which is currently also behind the live kiscode.com website. In this video, I'll be using a skill, using my AI coding assistant to scaffold a new version of the .NET brand website v3, a new project. I will select a different theme, and I will show you how to run it with using Aspire. Once it's up and running, I will show you how to authorize with the default admin user, how to grant more permissions so we can use more of the management functionality, and then simply that everything is functional out of the box. In my OpenCode AI assistant, I asked it to run the skill, which is basically create themed copy of the .NET brand website version 3. For this, you can choose the theme which you want to have the new project start with. You can change themes using the app settings. The brand theme is the kiscode.com brand theming. The default is just basic out of the box Bootstrap v5.3. Poppins is one I designed, let's say, evolved over one of my previous projects. And then you have a bunch of Bootswatch themes. Let's take a look at the Bright theme quickly. Let's do Bright. And then you have more of a poppy theme if that's your style. Depending on the project, of course, maybe you want something more classic, then this style will be applied. Let's see, what else do we have? Litera. It's also a nice theme. Most of the features and the modules and the architecture and versions and everything you need to know is documented inside the README files. But you'll be able to read through this once the project is available on kiscode.com/product or on my Patreon. So I chose the Poppins theme, which created Poppins, and then the date of today, a new project. Well, I named it Freedom, since that's a brand website I will be making soon using those same building blocks. And then it's just preparing the new project. It's taking out things that were specific to the Kiscode brand, for example, in terms of branding, and then the secrets. And I'll run the project with Aspire and help you start. So my Docker is running, Docker desktop. There is no database for this project for development now. This will be created when running Aspire. So I quickly renamed this to .NET brand website v3 and then the date of today. And all I'm going to do is run the Aspire host. If you don't want to run over Aspire, you can run the API project and the pre-render server, and perhaps the workers that you want to run separately. There is still a Docker file included to set up the database in Docker, because that can be easier for development purposes. I feel like when you're using Aspire, you might lose the hot reload, and for developing Blazor apps, so you can run the projects separately and then still enjoy that hot reload. Well, I left the Docker in there, so you can use that one without having to run Aspire. And that should start up the dashboard. Aspire dashboard should create a database for it, which is Microsoft SQL Server at this time. on a different port. And let's give it some time. You can see that's all the projects are in here. So this one failed because the service bus connection string is not in there. The same reason as having a local database or using Docker for the database, I left some of the credentials inside the app settings, so we don't need to run Aspire. We don't need to depend on this Aspire to run locally. I will show you the app host and show you what I mean later. So then what you get out of the box is, instead of that branded Giscode website, which is more like this, you get the theme that you chose. So I went for this Poppins theme, which is a bit more round and flat. And then the images are taken out, but all the rest is quite good. Let's see, we have the terms of conditions in there too. Let's share my experience. Very nice. Just, we're in development dummy. Yes. Not gonna care too much about this now. Okay. And we're also going to subscribe. Okay. And then we can manage this testimonial and see the email subscriber in the admin section. But everything is there out of the box. Contact should work once you enter the SMTP settings. The default user is admin@test.com, test1234 with capital T. That is the seeded user. We go to the admin page and we should have no permissions for all of these features. That is okay. If we go to users, we do have those permissions. So that's my user. You can reset the password, change the role. Roles, there's just one administrator. User, yeah, they already had it. Permissions, and this is where the fine-grained access control comes in. And this is now actually very, very useful because like I just mentioned, I might want to have my AI assistant create a blog post, update a blog post, create a product, update a product, or access the roles. I have all these auth permissions already as an administrator. I do want all of the permissions. So now if I log out and relog in, these permissions should be included in my tokens, my token. Instead of no access or unauthorized, I should start seeing these things. And then I added a review. Now I can say, oh, very nice, it's public, it's pinned, okay. Styling is not fully there. See, for this theme, can be improved. The mailing subscribers, we saw that we did subscribe to this. Okay, so after managing those reviews, testimonials, it should be present on the website. If I wanted a role, let's say agentic, I would do it like that. Permissions, now we have agentic. This one may want to view payments only, not manage them. This may want to be able to view the posts. Well, manage posts too, actually. And do all. Oops, view metrics, yeah. This could be all. Manage everything in the email stuff, maybe not the subscribers. Upload files, it might need to manage the blog posts or the products. View, there's not really a view for that right now. Let's see, and then in terms of, yeah, it might need to view the roles just for those membership handling. So I will try to have the AI create a blog post or let's start with a blog post. Can also create an email campaign and template and so on. But let's start simple. For that, I first need a user that gets the agentic role. To create a user, I don't have one here. So I'll have to log out, register a new user with an actual email address. I'm just working in development, so I'll just do this email address and give it a dummy password. Admin. Okay, I can see the user here. It's not confirmed. Let's try to just do it like that and give it the role agentic. See, agentic. So now we should be all set to have the credentials and the permissions to run a skill that will create a blog post. Let's first copy the host address because I don't want it to push to kisco.com. I wonder if it's going to pick up my skill or it's just going to create a blog post. So it did find my skill. Okay, so now it's asking me where to post to, whether my online, my live website, so api.yourdomain.com, or the local API. I'm gonna take the local API. It's the admin email address. Why the hell does that matter? It's actually should be asking for my user to authenticate with. Should not be asking the admin. I may have to fix that. Password. It's not admin. It's just a dummy password. The dummy user. Title. .NET brand website v3. Just try that. What type of post is this? Because it could be a newsletter, it could be a blog, it could be a members only post, portfolio, and so on. Let's do blog. Draft. Don't want to publish it. And this is now a skill coming from, well, which is included in the project. One of the below. Create themed copy is a skill I run before to create this, set up this project with the correct theme. Create blog post, and then you should have send email campaign, which should be create email campaign. You can write the blog post content. It's telling me here, authenticate post auth login with barrier token, which is using the identity endpoints. Draft a markdown content about the v3 release. Create a post on the blog post via put blog posts, which should be an upsert, no ID. Then confirm slug and draft status. Sounds good. Let's see if it can actually do it, this authentication and everything. So it's all documented in the skill. So now, why didn't I set up an MCP server for this project? Well, simply because I don't need anyone else to be writing blog posts to this personal kisco.com website. It's not like I'm accepting blog posts from all of my users or something like that. So it's just a one-to-one, just my computer, well, me or my agent that should create content on that website. And I already had an API set up which could do just that. And yeah, using a skill can basically should be able to authorize. How did that happen? It's good that it asks me. It seems to be working actually. Authenticated, got back the access token and the refresh token, and it should use that to do the following HTTP requests. So I would set up an MCP server if I were to build a SaaS product or a tool for which I want to grant access to other people's AI agents, so other people can submit stuff. Okay, so it seems to have created that with the following ID, slug, not public. Let's see if we can view it. Two of them. The cover photo, okay, that's not included because the Blob store settings weren't set properly. We have a markdown blog post. And now we could publish it, we could add an attachment, change the type if we wanted to, and we could protect access to the attachment. This was maybe the worst team to demo with, since this is basically a team from a completely different project, a previous project of which I haven't ported all the CSS yet. But if you were to have chosen Litera or Lux or one of the Bootswatch teams or the brand team, this should have all looked way better. I will publish this project on the kisco.com/products website as the V3 or on my Patreon. Once you subscribe, you get access. Currently, you can get the V1 and the V2 by simply becoming a member, which are heavily, or on here, where they are heavily discounted. The NuGet packages, .NET 10 ready, you can get for free by signing up to kisco.com/products. So definitely check out the README files to see what's inside, what's included, and how to set everything up, and how the modules are structured, well, the architecture and the technical decisions, and much more. You can easily run it locally using Docker for the database, and then the brand API and the pre-render server separately, or you can use the Aspire setup. The admin test and so on test user is included. Tells you how to do migrations if needed, but they should run on app startup. Then we have .NET Aspire, so you can simply, well, use your IDE or do .NET Run on the app host. And for deployment, after you have correctly filled in all of the app settings.json, or however you choose to set your production environment variables, you can run Aspire deploy. Then it will take you through a wizard where you choose your Azure resource group or subscription and things like that. And then it should deploy the entire thing as Azure Container Apps and Azure Container App Jobs. Note, these container apps are currently scaled to the lowest amount of resources, which seem to be working okay for my Kiscode brand website at this time. For other Blazor server apps or more heavy background workers, I noticed you would prefer to have the default resources, which is 0.5 vCPU cores and 1 gigabyte of memory. Now that I mentioned that, let's quickly go over the Aspire setup. So this was not straightforward. It has a slight learning curve to get started with Aspire like that. So I have a different settings when I want to publish to Azure as container apps than for development. And then there's a bunch of settings for both. So for example, in development, we're running Aspire. I might want to run a MS SQL database in a container. I may want to set a custom port, and for that, it is important to, let's see, set is proxy false. Otherwise you may have connection issues, it using a different port and this and that. Make sure to get and set the credentials to access the database. You can redact secrets if you want to, so it's not visible in the Aspire dashboard or the live environment. Well, not viewable. And then you can use Aspire NuGet packages to, like, for example, help you add in SQL Server with health checkpoints. Lifetime of persistence is so you would be using the same database over multiple runs. And with endpoint, you can expose an HTTP or TCP endpoint over set port. We can use this add parameter to make a password, well, a parameter resource, which can be necessary for these NuGet packages. They want a resource builder with credentials in a certain way, provided in a certain way. That sometimes has to do with deferred loading when the containers are starting, not everything is available yet, or things like that. For that, there's methods like wait for, so wait for the DB being available, and only then we should be able to get the connection string. So this expression, connection string expression, for example, it's only gonna have a value when this database is available. And then we're adding the connection string. Well, this is now a resource with connection string. which we will need to pass to the actual project on where we wait for that connection string to be available, which means that the database is available, and which means that this value can be passed to our projects. It's similar like we would be using the app settings, but then basically passing configuration settings between the different projects and containers. Why I did it like that, fill this resource with connection string, is because it may be a different connection string in development than it will be in production. In production, I may just want to use the one from the app settings, which would point to the production database on a managed Azure SQL server or instance. Same for messaging config or other kind of things. Domain name config is only for production. I will show you that later. So we've got that wait for and with reference again. That's again waiting for the correct resource to be available and the correct configuration settings to be passed to this application. So for the default connection string, that's quite easy to do. You can just do with a reference, and maybe perhaps with some other configuration settings you can do this as well. But for others, you may need to, like for custom environment variables, you may need to set these using a action. Set the API URL config variable on the Blazor application to that one of the actual API. So, which can only be done when the API is up and running. And this API URL could be different than the localhost one that I set in the project, which are similar, also projects, but then also waiting for that database to be ready, but then published as Azure Container App Jobs instead of just container apps. And this one, for example, can have a cron expression to run at 7 in the morning on certain weekdays. So these are all cron jobs. Will be running as container app jobs then. And then we also have projects that can connect to a queue, message queue, or topic even if you need that. Also container app job, but the trigger type is event. And just pass the queue name and the connection string. Connection string also different for production or development. Anyhow, let's look into the cron config. So what I meant with those resources is 0.25 vCPU cores and the memory set to half a gig, if I interpret this correctly, GYB or GY. I have just put everything to the lowest right now to save costs, as I hope. What else? Replica timeout and replica retry limit, so that resiliency. And then some extension methods. Then the qconfig, similar everything I did in previous videos, I did via the Azure portal. You can basically configure that into your app host or extension methods. So we can do all of that in code, which is pretty neat. It did take quite a while to figure all these things out, and yeah, that's why I'm quickly going over it. And yeah, you should be able to deploy this. I will put all of this on. It's a great project to rebuild its components from, its modules, and so on. Perhaps maybe for some to learn about the structure, the technical decisions and architecture in this project. But also, if you're not familiar yet with new concepts like the Spire orchestration, you can learn about that in this project. So after I've finalized a few fixes, I will put it on kisco.com/products and on my Patreon.